Okay. Yeah, we'll make a custom input component. What I want to do is try to visualize a path on a map. So it's gonna be using this GeoPoint type that's built into Sanity. But that's just for a single point, and we'll just make an array of those points and then make what Leaflet calls a polyline to actually show that those points, and hopefully be able to add new points to it and remove points from that line. And if we have time, maybe be able to move those points around. So yeah, we're gonna build this from scratch, so it might take a little time to get just the basic Leaflet stuff up and running, but I'll try to hopefully it'll go fine.
Yeah, and if you have questions, just ask them in the chat, and we'll try to answer them as we go. I can be sort of the chat assistant while Espen is driving the car that is the code editor.
Okay, so I will just start out by creating a new Sanity project for this, using Sanity init, and I'll just use a empty project right now, and once that's done installing all the dependencies, we will start coding. Actually, I will just open this up in an editor while that's installing the dependencies, so we can have a look at what's going on. So we've got a basic Sanity Studio here. As you can see, it's got no schema types right now. So well, let's do that. Let's add some. I guess we should just have a document type that we can use to experiment with this stuff. So I will add a let's say a trip type. A trip has like a geopath usually, right? And the type should be a document, and we should have a array of fields, and we'll just have a title just so it displays nicely in the studio, and then that's a type string, and then we need a path, and that should also have that should be of type array, and it should be of GeoPoints type GeoPoint. So that should be what we need to actually see this within the studio once this is done installing. There we go. So if we run npm start now, then it should start the Sanity Studio. That should be available on localhost 333, hopefully. Yes. So now it's compiling in the background. It takes a little while the first time. Also, this streaming stuff is using up a whole bunch of CPU, so it's a little slower than usual.
Yeah, I often have the same problem when I'm like using AirPlay to share the screen and doing live coding. It seems to like garble up all the CPU and or network bandwidth. So npm install takes like super long, which is what you don't want in a live coding situation.
Guess I should have like a separate computer for streaming this stuff, huh?
Yeah.
So once we've logged in, we can now see that we have a document type here with no documents. So let's create one. Let's call it the Grand San Francisco Tour. And when we add these paths, you can see that it just has these latitude and longitude and altitude properties. That's because we have no, that's like the default thing you get. These are the properties which exist on the GeoPoint. What we can do is install a plugin if we want to make this a little easier. For example, the Google Maps input, which makes this a little prettier, but I'm not going to do that right now. What we want is to render a map here using Leaflet and then allow adding points to it, to a path. So I guess that's the interesting part. So I've researched just a little bit because I've been delving into this thing called React Leaflet, and it's basically a React wrapper around Leaflet, which is a mapping library which can use, by default it uses OpenStreetMap's tile layers, which are open source and doesn't need like a API key, so it's pretty easy to get started. But you can also replace those tiles with something like Mapbox, which has they have a free tier, which you can, which is pretty generous. Which is those tiles are, in my opinion, a little prettier, but maybe less detailed than OpenStreetMap's ones. So I will just try to use this stuff to actually get something on screen. So I will install React Leaflet first.
And this is kind of like what I like with like doing customization with Sanity, that you can just like grab a React component to like get a head start and then try to like transform it into an actual input component.
Yeah.
So you can like build on a bunch of stuff that's like already done.
So let's see. I'm gonna make a plugin here, so I'll just create one that's called Geopath. And I like to keep my files within the source directory. And then I will call it, say, Geopath inputs. And I'll just start out by just importing React from React and just exporting component that just renders like an empty div for now, so we can see that it actually works. I'm an input component.
So you didn't use like the CLI to bootstrap like a plugin?
Oh yeah, I could have done that. It's you can also use Sanity init plugin, which will give you like a nice template to get started. Just wanted to show like the fundamentals where you don't necessarily have to initialize a new plugin for just testing stuff out. You can just start out by putting a React component somewhere and then referencing that within the schema. And then when you want to like publish and share this plugin, then you might want to like structure it as a proper plugin, which has like a Babel compilation step, and make sure that it's like distributable and installable and stuff like that. I guess we could do that in another stream actually. Show how to like publish modules and make them ready for the community to use. So I'll try to now just reference this in here. So you can specify on a field level or a document. No, not document level, field level, which kind of input component you want to use. There's also different ways of specifying that, such as an input resolver function, which can like look at the schema types that is available and figure out which component to use. So I'm just going to import that Geopath input and then reference that here. And let's see. I'm an input component, so that works.
Nice.
So now we, as you can see, I lost the title field here. So I guess if we want to try to get that back. So for that, let's see here. So we have to do some importing here for that to work. And we can import that from what we call a part. There's a component called Fieldsense, which can be imported from part sanity. This is the where I show my lack of memory because I can't never remember this thing. I think it's components Fieldsense default. It's hopefully. And then what you get to the props here is a bunch of useful things like the type, which is the schema type, and that holds the description and the title and the name and stuff. And of course you get the value, the current value of this field. So let's get those from the props. And let's try to render a field set. And I believe that it has a label. Or is it?
I can never remember this myself.
Yeah.
I have to look it up.
I think we should like document this a little bit better, huh?
Yeah, we could cheat and install Storybook, I guess.
Or I could just like copy paste something.
Yeah.
That's better. Like that. Oops. I'll make a note to actually try to document this stuff. Right. And there's also markers. Let's not forget markers. Markers has the validation information. So, and in the future we'll probably hold other things like field level information. And then there's the level, which is the depth of the input. So if you nested this the schema field within like 5 levels of a deep object hierarchy, that's the way it knows how deep it is. Should probably make that a little easier. So let's just say an input again and see whether or not it actually shows the path.
Nice.
All right. Now let's do the fun part. Let's try to get the map up and running. So it's called React Leaflet. So let's import from that, and it exposes.
What did you do there?
Oh, I have a VSCode plugin, which you can just like type a file or a
nice.
dependency, and it just like figures out where that is and how to import it. It's pretty cool. I think it's called.
Do you remember what extension it is? Just to derail you a bit.
Yeah. I think it's like node require, quick require, node require. Yeah, node require.
Cool.
It's pretty cool. It also detects whether or not you're using imports or like CommonJS require statements. So it's pretty cool. Highly recommended.
I will install it at once.
So a map requires a tile layer, as far as I remember. Guess we could just check out the documentation for this thing. And we'll just use the OpenStreetMaps tiles for now, because they're easiest to get started with, since you don't need an API key or anything. And the map needs a position and a zoom. So what we're gonna do is just set a default center for now. What is the like coordinates for? Well, let's use these and see where that is. I'm very interested in seeing where React Leaflet wants you to be. Oops, can't resolve Leaflet. Okay, so I need to install Leaflet as well. Let's go over here. I'm using Yarn instead of npm right now, because internally Sanity uses Yarn to install dependencies, and so it just creates less issues when you install using the same package manager.
That's something that we might want to look at some point, I guess.
Yeah, it's not an easy problem to solve, but whoops, what's this? Okay, maybe I need to actually reload this thing too. Let's try to restart the server and see if that helps. I am assuming that this will also need a bunch of CSS, so it might look kind of weird.
James says that I'm still in the habit of using Yarn from when it was like 100 times quicker to install dependencies than NPM.
Yeah, I did that for the longest time, but now that NPM is fast again, I feel like it's the sort of like the official solution. So I'm trying to use it as much as possible, and hopefully we'll be able to migrate the Sanity CLI to use NPM as well. So it's all like one big thing. And now, yeah, what do you know?
We have tiles.
It's like a beautiful. I think this is because of the missing CSS. We're seeing this very garbled things.
I think we're done.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know if they have like oh, because it just depends on this, so it needs this CSS, and I'm assuming that this will just be like a global, something that injects itself into the global namespace. Yeah, just with like global selectors. It's not the optimal way of doing it in Sanity, but
You could just copy paste the code and put it in a CSS file, I guess.
Yeah, so the problem is that we're using these
That's true.
CSS modules, which is something pretty cool, because they kind of isolate CSS from each other, so you can scope things and it doesn't like collide with each other. But we have let's see, let's call that Leaflet CSS, paste that here. So if I'm now just gonna require this, it will actually rewrite these selectors to be named something totally different. So what we actually want, well, because the React Leaflet will insert these exact names, what we actually want is to use CSS modules. You can do like some root class and then say global, and then you want the selector within that, and then you've got the effect that you want, but you have to do that for every selector. Luckily, I have actually encountered this problem before, and I've created
You have a trick up your
I have a trick up my sleeve. I don't know if this is recommended. Let's see. Prefixify CSS. I think it's. Do I have it installed?
So Daniel is saying that you can wrap everything in global.
Can I? That's okay. That's news to me. Can I just do that? It complains at least. Is this the way of doing it?
Global and like curly brackets.
Oh, right. Global like that?
Yeah, I'm not sure about the colon. Or yeah, there's colon. The chat room shouts curly brackets.
Like this? Is
I
that
think so.
Is that a legal thing? Let's try it out. Leaflet CSS. Let's import it and see what happens. Oh, it's and it's missing a bunch of images, of course.
But the CSS part maybe worked.
Yeah, it looks like it's doing something at least. let's see if we can just copy these files then. It only appear to be 3 of them, so shouldn't be too much work, right? This is what you want to see on a stream, just like a whole bunch of copying files back and forth.
But it's called programming.
Ah, okay. Well, maybe I could just reference these directly in the thing. Then maybe that'll be easier.
We forgot to look stuff up on Stack Overflow.
Yeah, like any good programmer would. Well, they got at least got rid of the messages, but it doesn't look like it solved the actual styling issue. Let's see. It doesn't look like those classes are there. I'm just gonna use my old. I'm gonna use. Well, I want to show you this trick anyway because I kind of.
Yeah.
It's fun. So I made this tool called
the chat room laid.
What are they saying?
They was like leading us astray with their like global thing, curly brackets. It doesn't work.
Yeah, never works. Totally doesn't work. I don't know. It probably does.
They're totally not doing it wrong.
Oh yeah, Marius has a point. Let's see.
Yeah. So Marius, he should probably know, since he's like our head of design.
Well, I wouldn't say he's. I wouldn't put all this CSS modules stuff on him. I don't know if.
I guess he has dealt with it a bit. Well,
let's do it right. So prefixify help. What does it need? It needs an input file. So let's say we call that Leaflet CSS, and we want it to be prefix CSS, but we also need to give it a class name. So let's say .leaflet. And what do you know? Now we have, oops, because it was, well, maybe I should remove that global thing now.
So do you have like headphones, Espen?
I do have headphones.
People are complaining about echo. I suspect my sound is like echoing in your mic or something.
Okay. I guess I can try this. Let's try it out. Can you still hear me? Oh, very good. Is that better for the stream as well? Okay, awesome. Let's see, where are we? Images slash. Oh, perfect. I can hear you just fine. Let's see if we have the settings. Interesting if they just... So do I go back to the non-headphones? Ah, that's interesting. You can only ever hear Knut through Espen's microphone. Okay. There's no... that explains the poor audio then. Why does it not get the... Yeah, I'm looking into that now. Audio input capture. No, that's not it. I mean, there's no... I can't find any way to configure this except it just says desktop audio. Excuse me. I'm gonna go back to the non-headphones thing. I guess I'll just keep going like this, and for the next stream we'll make sure to actually get something more reliable working for the the audio capture.
Yeah, I think you can probably somewhat improve it by having a higher volume on your on your machine. And I asked the chat room about, like, do you know how to actually route Zoom into Streamlabs?
Great. Okay, let's go back to coding here. If we run this again now, then it should see, yeah, you'll see that it prefixed all of these selectors with global. So let's try to use this instead.
So James is saying that the audio should just work if Zoom is outputting to default device.
Yeah, that's what it's doing. Yep. I mean, that's what it says. So it's expecting, it's outputting to internal speakers. So I guess I could, no, that should be fine. Yeah.
Right. Let's get back to coding.
Yeah.
We can figure this out next time.
Yeah. So the styles now, let's see. The styles now, we're importing them, and because they now are prefixed with a class called .leaflet, that will now be able to, we can use that to say, I mean, we need to reference that somewhere. I guess this might have a selector, so we'll just call it styles.leaflet. Hopefully that works. If not, then we need to wrap it in a parent. That's at least a little better. Not perfect. Let's try to move it up here, see if that works. Oops. I'm so used to having prettier here that my code looks like looks a little weird. I guess it also might need a width and a height. That might be the one thing that's causing it to not know how large it should be.
Seems so.
Yeah, so let's give it like a root here that has a size width 100%, and then let's set the height to 500 pixels maybe. See if that works. Still nothing. Maybe we should have that on the actual map then, because it looked like it was working somewhat when I did that. Okay, it's 100%, but it's 100% way outside the bounds.
It doesn't have a container, or it uses the
Yeah, maybe the main thing here needs to have some kind of, or the parent needs to have some kind of position. Oh, this is way down, huh? Okay, let's say that we have a wrapper then. And let's give that a height of 500 pixels and a width of 100%. I guess that's the default though, so it's kind of weird. No. Not totally sure why it's within or without any constraint there.
The hardest part about custom input components is the CSS.
Yeah, I guess we should have just used something a little simpler, huh? Not have this very interactive example of CSS and maps and all kinds of stuff. Figuring this stuff out is CSS isn't my strong suit, I will say. Also, it's really hard to get the actual... There we go. So the container has the right size.
Yeah.
It's just like expanding beyond it.
Yeah, overflow hidden.
Yeah, that's the.
I guess it works, right? You don't need the whole thing.
I mean, I guess, but
there's a certain consensus about overflow hidden, but yeah.
On what? Like the wrapper?
I guess, yeah, good question. Like on sort of the map components, but yeah.
Let's see.
Could we make it work still? Like despite the
Just
styling issue?
looking like it is now?
Yeah. Yeah, so overflow hidden on the wrapper.
Overflow hidden. Well, that really didn't work.
Prefix.
What?
I love that we get so much help from the chat. We need a prefix.
Prefix for what?
So the glow is...
What? Well, I think I lost you.
Global, yeah, you need a global prefix. But do you for those?
No, not for these, because these are the ones that I'm referencing directly in.
Yeah.
So these are like, this will be written to some kind of string, some weird string, and then this part will be kept intact, so it'll be like something like that. So it looks like it's working for some of these styles, but not for others for some reason. Not quite sure why. I'm assuming that it's some kind of it's probably something really simple, huh? Because the wrapper, you can see that that has the right properties. The container, leaflet container, oh well, that's not actually hitting anything. I guess that's the problem then. Oh, because this is the roots. Okay, well that explains it. Let's see. Because
yeah, so wrapper probably still needs width and height and overflow hidden.
Yeah, well, I think this has to be the parent, and this has to, that shouldn't be its leaflet actually, because that might just need a height. So let's call that styles map, and just do dot map here and set a height for that maybe. Actually, let's make this a little higher, because then the descendant selectors weren't targeting the right thing, at least, because we were. There we go.
Oh yeah!
Yeah! Yoo! Yay! City of
Huge
London.
applause.
Finally. Okay.
Woo!
Took a little too long. We have a map. Yay! Let's do the actual fun stuff. What were we gonna make? Like a bunch of points. So those are, if we look at the documentation for this thing, React Leaflet, it has a component called a Polyline, I think. And that's just like a line, and it has a bunch of positions, which is the same thing that we're using in the array. It's a bunch of lat long points. So let's import that from what's it called, Polyline, and let's just pretend that we have a bunch of points here. Positions, was it? That's an array of these, so I guess we'll just put 2 of the same ones right now, because those are the lat longs that we have. I'm not sure if those, they might have to be like an actual lat long object and not an array of that like tuple, I guess it's called, tuple. And I have no clue if, well, I guess we can't see it if it's the same point, so let's maybe put 52.009. Yay, so we now have a line on there.
Exciting line.
A very exciting line. Well, this will of course be fetched from the value once we have some actual values in there. So maybe we should check if we do have a value. So has value, do we have a value? And that might be undefined, which it probably is now because there's nothing in there. But it might also be an array that's empty. So let's say if it does have a value, it will be an array. And if it does have that, let's check that we actually have points. And yeah, so now we can conditionally render this based on whether or not we have a value, and then we can pass in these values if we do have them.
Makes sense.
Yeah. But since we don't have any data right now, we need to add some. So let's add I figure like if we click on the map, it'll just add a point to the line. So let's do add or handle add point when you click on the map, and that takes an event. Let's see what it looks like. And I think we also probably want to import, like we need to actually run a patch when someone adds this. So we'll import what we call a patch event and a set of different patches that we might need. from Sanity. I can't remember this on the top of my head, so let's go here and search for custom input components. Patch event. There we go. So there's a set and an unset patch, and there's also an insert patch. I think there's more different types as well. I just can't remember those right now, but I think these are the only ones that we will probably need. And through the props you also get something called an onChange function, which is what you're emitting these patches to actually change the value. So that's ready to go. Let's see what happens when we click on the map. So when we click on the map, it emits these events, and that has a lat long and a bunch of other things. I guess we only need the lat long. That's already in the format that we want. It has a lat and it has a long. So, but it didn't have a, obviously this doesn't have a underscore type property, which is what we want in Sanity. We're very fond of our keys and types, so we can infer which type things are. And so the object that we want to add is, so new point is lat long, but also a type, which is GeoPoint. And because this is within an array, we kind of want a key, and the key should just be unique within that array. So it can be any random string really, as long as it's unique within that array. Right now I'll just use, for simplicity, I will just use the lat, or the long and the lat, and just hope that that's like unique enough. Obviously you
get two exact same points.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, in theory you should just use a random generator or something. You can even just do like counter, like, but that's not use that. Use like a nano ID or something. Actually, we should probably use that, like a nano ID library.
Don't we have something out of the box?
Do we?
I think so.
Oh,
we're creating unique keys in the studio every day, every hour, every second.
I'm just not sure where they're being generated from, but yeah, we can look that up and link that in the. Oh well, this isn't a podcast, so we can't do the show notes, but whatever it is. Anyway, that's besides the point. What we really need is to emit these points now. So let's do onChange and then patch event from, and that takes an array of patches that we want to emit. And in this case, we just want to insert this at the end of the array. So the first item is, or the first argument is the items in plural that we want to insert. In this case, we only have a single. And then it's the position. In this case, it's after the last item in the array. And that, so this is kind of weird, but these are the path segments that we want to target. So you can do stuff like, if you have an object, you can do deep nested property is where you want to insert it. Or in this case, because this input is actually targeting an array, you're actually just inserting into like indices or somewhere within that array. So I'm just going to insert it after the last item in this thing, which I should be -1. And let's see if that works. Yay!
Wow.
And as you can see, it's updating like automatically because because when you emit that patch, the input component will just get a new value, and that value will automatically get rendered. And so it's very easy. You don't have to like maintain any kind of internal state to get that. And it also it's also what like powers this to do real-time things without you having to worry about the nitty-gritty details. So if I have 2 of these open and add points, oops, not sure what's going on here. Oh wow, that's interesting. It's not, oops, I think there's some rendering issue or something. But you can see them actually appearing on the other end of this. I think we still have some styling issues with this leaflet thing, but let's leave that for now. I'm sure we can figure that out later. So that's the insertion. And maybe we should try to, actually, how much time do we have? Are we at the end of our time almost?
I think we are scheduled for a half an hour. We have 30 minutes left, sweet. If we want.
Yeah, I guess we're looking.
Want to stick around.
I mean, it's this is fun, so maybe we can at least try to get some removal working. And it's also might be a little hard to see where these path segments are if they're very close together, because it's like if there's not a large change in this, we don't really know where the actual individual segments are split into. So maybe we should add like a little dot at the end of each thing, which we can target if we want to remove things. So let's, if it has a value, then we can also do, let's say, value map. So for each of these points, we want to render something, and I guess we could make markers, or we could make some other shape.
You can use emoji.
I'm just not sure it has like what the overlay options are. It has a bunch of like things you can insert pretty easily. As
so I was imagining that you can sort of place anything there.
I'm sure you can, at least with SVG overlay you should be able to do that, but I'm not sure what as long as it's SVG kind of thing. But let's do something simple and use the circle, I guess. That seems. So we need to import that. Oops. And that took a center and a radius, which are required. What is the radius though? What is that number? In meters, okay. I guess that depends on the zoom level, but center, that is the actual point, because it's each point is a lat long. And let's set the radius to what? It's 30 meters. Should be able to see that on the map, right? Yay! So now you have these little dots. So maybe if we click on these, or like control click or something, then we can remove that individual segment from the path. Hopefully this has a bunch of event hooks. Let's see. Events. Yeah, it has click and double click and all sorts of stuff. So we can then add just a on click to this thing. Handle remove point. And I guess that has the same shape, so it has a lat long. but it would probably be best, like if we change this key format, then it's hard to, because what we want to do is actually find out which point we clicked and remove that specific thing from the array. And so just relying on this key being this exact shape and form is seems kind of dodgy. So maybe we should actually take the event here and pass the actual key down as well. So point.key. Maybe I should wrap this line. Also, maybe I should just install Prettier, because this is formatting this stuff by hand is just a pain. Yarn add Prettier.
Do you remember when we used to do that?
I do remember that, and I remember you spending so much time and being so proud of all my styling choices and just throwing them out the window when Prettier came along. Okay, let's see. So now we get the key here as the second property. And what we want to do now is to emit a patch event from, and then we have an unset patch. And again, we're targeting the actual array, and now we want to find a specific item within this array. So there are 3 different path segments, which in Sanity, you have the string, or just a string that's just a property on a object, like object property. And then you have a index, so that's like 13 within that array, or you have the underscore key foo, which is the item that has the underscore key matching foo. So I'll use the last one, which is the one that's most robust in like a real-time scenario, because when there's multiple people editing the same content, index 13 might mean something different from you and from the other user if there are concurrent edits. But whereas using a key is more robust because it's easier to find that specific item and remove it. So
like this patch syntax looks perhaps kind of like unfamiliar, but it's so nice to not have to like use slow dash to find something in object and rewrite the whole thing and so on. It just takes care of it.
Yeah. It is also slightly more complicated than it might like appear because of the real-time nature. So because we're expressing these patches in this way, you get that nice collaborative non-conflict scenarios. So yeah, let's see. We want to unset the property where the key matches this thing. So in theory, it's like that.
There's James Quick.
James Quick.
I'm about to start a stream myself, but just want to check in for one of the first Sanity streams. Yay!
Yay! Guess we actually don't even need these lat longs since we're just targeting the key. So
yeah, so I did a stream with James yesterday about how to do portable text with Gatsby. It was quite fun.
Oh, how did that go? Was he sold?
It went pretty well.
Very cool.
He got like code and images and everything.
Nice. So now I have that in place. Let's see if that works. So if I click on one of these, it will do something. It's triggering.
It removes one and adds the other.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Okay. So first off, I want to see that if the event dot, I think it's called original event, which is the like actual DOM event that was fired. Let's say that we need the, what is the meta key? Is that the, no, meta, or is it just meta? I want to check that we actually hold the command key for Mac or control key for Windows or whatever to be able to remove these things. So if if I now click that original event, yeah, Alt key, Control key and stuff. Okay, so let's say that if we have the meta key pressed, then I want to perform this patch. And similarly, if the meta key is pressed here, then I want to just return because I don't want to add a new point. I'm sure we could prevent the default thing from happening as well. If we just stop propagation, I'm sure that would stop it, but I'm not sure which order these events are applied in, whether the remove or the other one is triggered first. So if I click now, I can remove these.
Ooh.
Very cool. That was
Do you want to have like a reset button?
yeah, right now I do kind of want that. Let's just throw that in to see whether or not that's how hard that's to button on click equals handle reset type equals button. I guess we should use a proper UI component here and not like just a just a unstyled button, but for the sake of handle reset. On change, and I guess we can just unset the entire array. Not maybe this is the way of doing it. Just have an empty array, because that'll target the that will target the actual array. I'm not sure. No. Oh,
Isn't it
patch events. I forgot the from.
Yeah.
Could use some better error handling there. Might also just have unset without the path. I don't know. Yay. That works.
And what happens if you go into history view now?
Oh, interesting.
Does that work?
Yeah.
Yeah, it works. That's cool.
Very cool. Perhaps on change is not a function.
Almost.
Oh, this is supposed to be read-only. That's an interesting point that we need to fix.
You found a bug.
Yeah, I found a bug. You're not supposed to be, because this is another thing that you probably want to implement is I believe it's on the top level here that you can get a read-only property, and if it is in a read-only state, you shouldn't be able to like change it. So you might want to like disable buttons or say some kind of, I don't know if it should be like sometimes you wanna, for these kind of components you wanna mark them as being read-only, but just by setting the like the DOM attribute so that it gets like grayed out or something. But I guess that depends on the use cases here. So in this case, if we have it as a read-only, we might set like the disabled state here for this reset button to be like read-only.
I guess just return on the handlers or something.
Yeah, I think also underneath the hood that it should just not emit the patch, but it's probably good for him to not do a whole lot of work if you don't have to do it. So as you can see now, when we switch to a historical version, it's that is disabled, and if I remove that, then it's back to normal. All right. Yeah. I guess we could try to implement. Well, it's implementing like a drag and drop thing for these points seems a little more work than I probably have time for in 20 minutes. I'm not too familiar with drag and drop APIs, especially not only these like I guess we could like theoretically just update the center and the points that we're dragging, but that would require us to do some more work, because you don't want to emit these patches like 100 times while you're dragging. You want to probably have some kind of optimistic view of how it will look, and then you'll have to like duplicate the state maybe, so that you can have like a sort of a ghost mode where it renders a halfway translucent polyline in addition to the other one or something, so that when you actually release the dragging, then it actually does the patch. But I think this is a good start at least.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is there any questions from the chat room about what we did?
I think I broke the add feature now for some reason. Interesting. Nothing from the chat, huh?
They are probably just in awe.
Oh, here's an interesting thing. This is another style or CSS thing.
Or the good old set index.
Yeah. Set index minus 9,000 and hope for the best kind of thing. That's interesting.
Yeah, but I think this was like a nice demonstration of how to do a custom input component. So yeah, we have a question. This was great, thanks. I'm curious if there's an easy way with Leaflet OpenStreetMap to connect the points with actual pedestrian paths, streets.
Very good question. I don't actually know. I guess there aren't like well, I guess with OpenStreetMaps you have a bunch of like really advanced APIs, but since it's not a hosted service, you kind of either have to pay some OpenStreetMaps provider for those APIs, or maybe use a different like service. I'm quite fond of like Mapbox's offering, because their APIs are very developer friendly. And yeah, you can use it pretty easily with like Leaflet, and if not, you can also use like just if you just want to use Mapbox, you could even probably use their own like Mapbox JavaScript libraries, which use I think they even have like a WebGL rendering library and all kinds of like super fancy things. But I guess what you probably want to do is to just route these. Like when you add points, you probably want to snap those to some kind of street corner or something. I don't know how hard or easy that would be to actually implement.
Yeah, because a use case is like adding actual hiking trips or whatever to the component, so you can like have trips.
Yeah,
seems like a cool thing to have made.
Absolutely. I guess yeah, and importing those things to Sanity is probably a viable way. Like you could, even with like a Google, when you do like Google routing, you could probably get back like the GeoPoints for that route, insert that and use that. So I guess it depends on how you want to input this stuff. I'm planning on using something like this to import all my Strava data, so I can show my running paths within Sanity and like make some kind of cool heat map or something based on all that data. So It looks like this might be using Leaflet under the hood, or at least the API looks very similar, given these L dot something.
I think so. So, do we have time to like go through how you would actually publish this?
Sure. At least like on a grand scheme of things. So right now these are just raw. Like it's using imports. It's using maybe unsupported features like arrow functions, which might not be available in all browsers. So obviously the JSX from React. So all of that needs to be compiled into something like a representation that works in all the supported browsers. And so you want to run Babel on that. Right now that's kind of up to you how you want to handle. We're working on some tooling that will just compile that stuff for you as a like pre-publish step. But the one thing that you want to do is to rename. If you want to publish this thing, you want to name these things Sanity plugin, Geopath input, for instance, just to be in line with our naming schema. And that it allows people to write Sanity install Geopath input, for instance. Then you will need a package JSON, which is like how npm understands that package. So that would be done by running npm init or yarn init if you prefer that. And then it'll ask you a couple of questions like the version. You'll give it a description. An entry point, which you usually might not need, or maybe like depends on how you want to wire this stuff up. One thing to keep in mind is that this is now living inside of a source folder, and what you usually have is like a compiled folder as well. So all the stuff within source gets copied into the lib folder, for instance. When you compile it. And we don't need these files anymore. So this would, like if you want to reference this Geopath input file, we should actually not point that to the source folder because that's the uncompiled version, but the lib folder. So lib geopath input js. Test if you have test, that's great, but I don't have that right now. Git repository, you should probably have that and put in the URL here, which will help people find the source code for your plugin once it's published to npm. And we of course very much appreciate if you put some sanity keywords like sanity input or sanity plugin at least in here, so we can easily pick those up and detect that you've published a plugin. And in terms of license, that's obviously up to you. I prefer MIT, but totally up to you what you want to use there. Just keep in mind that if you want people to actually use your plugin, you probably want something fairly permissive like MIT or BSD3 or something. There's a bunch of enterprises that are, should we say, vary about using anything that's GPL or something. And so now that you got that file in place, you also want to have a sanity JSON file. And it has a paths property, which has a compiled, which is the path pointing to where it finds the compiled files, and then a source, which is where it finds the uncompiled files, and that will just help it while you're in development. It will know that it will look for these folders and treat them a little differently. It will try to like not use the lib version if it finds the source files. So it just makes it easier for development. And if you have a special, sometimes you want to provide like a schema type that people can just like install into their studio. For instance, here we have, you can see all the studios are bootstrapped with this thing where you get all the sanity-based schema types, and then you concatenate your own schema types on top of that. So that means that if I now want to provide a schema type for this, which in this case it's just an array of geopaths, but in theory I could do things like parts, which is an array, and then I want to implement the part called sanity-based schema type, and the path to the file that implements this will be, and this path is relative to these, so it'll just be let's say schema type.js, and then if I write a schema type.js, that can then export like name geopath, for instance, title geopath, and the type is an array of type GeoPoint. So now people can actually just install this plugin, and they'll have this geopath type, so they can reference that in their own schema. So now I could use stuff like instead of having type array, I can just do type geopath, and you can then provide the input component for that as well. So you can write like the default input component should be the geopath input. So if I import that, then it will automatically use that input for all of those things, like that. So that's the basic things. Then of course you need the actual Babel compilation. Like I said, we're working on some tooling to make this easier. It totally depends on like what you're used to. And what your preferences are. Like you might be using TypeScript, and in that case you probably you're probably on your own. Like you probably have opinions on how this stuff should be done, and which kind of configuration you want, and which browsers to support, and all that kind of good stuff. But in many cases you just want something easy. So I'm not saying this is how it's gonna be in the future, but I have been working on this thing called SaniPack. So if that becomes a reality, then you will be able to do something like this. That, and then you'll get
nice.
a potential like config file. If you have configuration for this plugin, you will have a README that has like the how to use it, how to install it, the configuration, the license file. The license file will be bootstrapped based on your selected license, and it will also add these build scripts and pre-publish scripts, and it will also run a verify command to verify that all your like package JSON and sanity JSON and stuff actually matches what we expect. And it'll also install things like prettier and ESLint configs for you. It's very opinionated right now, but you can opt out of some of that if you want to.
That's cool.
That's
that makes it way easier.
Yeah, it's like most of the steps that I just did would just be running that in it, and it would just be ready. Because you also want to ignore a bunch of files from being published, and that's also handled by this. It creates like an npm ignore file and stuff. So now if I if I run build now, SaniPack build, then it can't do that because I haven't actually installed the dependencies.
While you install those dependencies, we have another question.
Yeah.
While using a meta key for removing a point creates an issue on tablet or mobile, and that's a good point. So how would you actually deal with like responsive or like tablet mobile interface? I guess do you have like API like events for long press and stuff?
Good question.
It's a good question.
A very good question. I'm just, this was mostly from like a very high level. I don't actually know the I don't know the right way to add this stuff in a user-friendly manner. I'm sure there are patterns for this stuff. Long press, no. Press, touch. I don't actually know. I guess it depends on the use case, because the same thing can be said for like dragging points around is really hard on like fine grain devices. I guess you would need like a bigger hit target to actually get to that point.
Yeah, or you can make like a toolbar and like activate like sort of the operations that you want.
Yeah.
So yeah, now I want to unset things, or now I want to set things.
Absolutely, and I guess you could also. It has these tile or these overlays, so I guess you could also render like a pop over, where you could put buttons in it, maybe like with actions. So when you press on a map, it'll just pop up like a little thing where that says add point, or if you press one of the points that already exist, you can like remove that point, or you can like click it and say move, and then press somewhere else on the map, and that moves the thing. So I guess there's a whole lot of different like interaction ways of making that interaction work, but I guess I'm not like a user interface designer, so I guess you should be asking someone else about that.
Yeah, so we actually have a user interface designer in the chat, and he says, like Marius, he says that you can use React use gesture. He's not sure if it has long press, but it probably has some gestures and stuff. You can swipe away the points. I don't know. But yeah, cool.
Yeah.
So yeah, are you actually going to publish this?
Not in this shape or form. I guess I will now have to reflect on the user interaction stuff.
Yeah, it's true.
But I did publish a plugin called Sanity plugin Leaflets input, I think. Yeah, which was just it just did the absolute basics, like it just does this marker. Like you can click on the map and it adds that marker, and you can click on the marker and then click remove to remove it. So it's much easier and like dumber, but that's like the basic things, and that's also showing how you can if you want to have a look at the source code, it does show like how you can provide a configuration file for plugins, and how you can then load that and let people specify options on like a field level. So here we have like where the default location should be and stuff like that.
Neat.
Yes.
Right. Perhaps we should call it a day, or at least a stream.
Yeah, it's been. I will try to get these audio stuff worked out for the next time, obviously.
Yeah, and I guess we will try to do it next week.
Sure.
And meanwhile, like, do come with suggestions of what we could like show you or demonstrate or live code somewhere in slack.sanity.io. That's where the community is. And yeah, like and subscribe and all of that. What do you say on Twitch, actually?
I
Follow?
Subscribe? Follow? Followers.
Follow us on Twitch, yeah. Cool. Thanks to the chat room for hanging with us and asking us questions and so on. That was pretty nice. Makes it all the more fun.
Yeah. Thanks for tuning in.
Right. Yeah, it's been cool to see the tagging functionality Peter is working on. Yeah, that
Very
would
true.
be cool, actually.
Yeah.
Right. Thank you all so much.
See you.
See ya.